Toeplitz, politics staff writer for Roll Call, joining me on this Saturday afternoon as well. Thank you both for being here. Shira, I want to start with you. Mark Salter, longtime aide for Senator John McCain, prominent Republican. He wrote something a few days ago in Real Clear Politics. I want to put a snippet of it on the screen here, saying in part, quote, "The rush by Republicans, including Mitt Romney, Sarah Palin, and scores of other conservatives to condemn President Obama for policies they claimed helped precipitate the attacks is as tortured in its reasoning as it is unseemly in its time." And we just heard from Rick Santorum there as well. How has the Romney campaign responded to the backlash over his comments?
Well, initially, they didn't even blink. They held a press conference. They doubled down on the issue. They didn't see anything wrong with it. And in the following days, you saw some of his senior advisors on foreign policy speak out and further emphasize their point. They didn't back down at all. But towards the end of the week, we saw them change the subject slightly. We saw Romney, particularly himself, and Paul Ryan at the Voter Value Summit return to issues like the economy, which is what they'd much rather be talking about right now than what happened earlier this week in the Middle East.
Jim, in your recent issue, Bobby Ghosh raises a great question. He asked, did the Arab Spring make that region more dangerous? And he also introduces a new term to our lexicon, a global industry of outrage. What is that?
Well, the global industry of outrage is, I mean, these protests did not spontaneously erupt because hundreds of millions of people around the world saw a YouTube video. They were told about the video through a series of imams, bloggers, radio and talk show hosts who whipped them up into an anti-American violence, convinced them that the American administration was somehow responsible for this particular video, which is the great disconnect about what's happening here. It's not really, the video could have been anything. You know, movie makers call it the MacGuffin. It doesn't matter what the video is or what it said. It's how what was in the video was transferred to the people, what people think that the video is about. And yeah, there's a global industry where the Salafi movement, it is in their interest to foment and incite hatred for the United States.
And this is a coordinated effort?
It's a loose network. No, it's not a global conspiracy. And some of these imams, you know, don't even know what the others are doing in particular parts of the world. It's not a global conspiracy, but you know, from country to country to country, there are, for that particular religion, you know, there's effectively a right-wing movement that it's in their interest to incite this kind of hatred.
Sure, I want to turn back here for a second to the political implications of some of this stuff here. For the first time in a very long time, a Democratic presidential candidate has a clear advantage on national security issues. There's that Washington Post poll that was taken before the protests. It shows that voters trust President Obama over Mitt Romney when it comes to dealing with terrorism, 51 to 40%. And when it comes to international issues, 51 to 38%. There's a snippet from the poll right there. What do you expect happens to those numbers after this week?
I don't think they'll change much. If anything, I think they'll increase for the president. But let's remember what a difference 4 years makes. Okay, 4 years he was seen very weak on foreign policy, especially compared to Senator John McCain, who's been in the Senate and dealt with these kinds of issues forever. So I think just being in the office of the presidency itself really helps the incumbent in this case, and that's obviously Obama.
Jim, turn back to the protests here. We've seen around 20 protests. We just heard from Jim State a few moments ago that it looks like things are finally starting to calm down a bit in the Middle East. But Southeast Asia, they've spread there. They've spread now even to Australia. What do these protests reveal? What's the larger narrative here?
I think the protests reveal that the United States, and by extension the West, is really losing the information war about what the West stands for. The thing that I'm most concerned about, again, is not so much this particular movie, because on the internet, if you want to be offended, if these imams in the culture of outrage want to find something to whip people up into a froth about next time,
there'll be riots every day.
They're going to find it. I mean, there's so much sacrilege and so much to be offended. You know, it's just, if this can happen with a movie like this, it can happen again and again and again.
How are we losing the information war? It certainly can't be from a lack of trying.
Well, I think that's a great question, but I think even on this channel, I saw this man on the street interview of somebody in Egypt who he clearly couldn't fathom that President Obama couldn't have known about the video before it was released on the internet. So when you have millions of people worldwide who don't know what the internet really is, how it works, and it's inconceivable for them to think that the American president could not control everything on it. It's like we're from different planets. I mean, it's really distressing.
It's like we're from different planets. We will leave it right there. Jim Frederick, Time Magazine, Shira Toeplitz with The Hill. Thank you both so much. Appreciate your time. We're actually going to check in with you a little bit later in the hour as well, so stick around. Don't go too far.